My name is James Parker, and if you had asked me at 55 what I believed about love, I would have told you that my story was finished. I lived in Seattle, Washington, in a quiet house just a few blocks from Lake Union, where the waters shimmered with reflections of sailboats and the skyline stretched proudly across the horizon. I worked most of my life as an accountant, a steady job that gave me stability but never much excitement. My marriage ended years ago, and though I raised two wonderful children who had gone off to build their own lives in Portland and San Francisco, my days had become predictable. Coffee at the same cafe, grocery runs at the same store, and long walks through Gasworks Park where I often sat on a bench staring at the water. It wasn't that I was unhappy, but I thought I had already lived the chapters that mattered. Love, I believed, was something I had already written into my past. But life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. One rainy afternoon in Seattle, I ducked into a small independent bookstore to escape the drizzle. The place smelled of paper and coffee, with shelves stretching floor to ceiling, and a cozy cafe tucked into the corner. I was scanning the rows of biographies when I heard laughter. Warm, melodic, impossible not to notice. I turned my head and saw her. She was standing at the counter, silver hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing a soft blue scarf and holding a stack of novels in her arms. She looked around 60, graceful yet radiant, with eyes that seemed to carry both wisdom and kindness. She glanced at me briefly, and for a moment, I felt as if the whole store had gone quiet. I didn't speak to her then. I just watched as she ordered her tea and sat by the window with her books. But the image stayed with me long after I left the shop. The next day, almost by instinct, I found myself walking back there. And there she was again, sitting in the same spot by the window. I gathered the courage to walk over and asked, "Mind if I sit here? The other tables are full." She smiled, and in that single gesture, my heart softened in a way it hadn't in years. Her name was Evelyn Carter, a retired history professor from Chicago who had moved to Seattle to be closer to her daughter. We talked for an hour that day, about books, about the rain, about the quirks of Seattle living. The next day, we met again. And then again. Before long, it became routine. I would go to the bookstore cafe in the afternoon, and she would be there, waiting with a pot of tea and her favorite novels stacked beside her. Our conversations stretched from light-hearted stories about travel to deeper confessions about loneliness and hope. She told me about losing her husband years ago, about how she thought she'd never feel that spark again. I admitted that I, too, had buried that part of myself. But when I was with her, it felt as though the years melted away. I wasn't a man counting his age anymore. I was simply someone alive, someone learning again. One evening, after weeks of these bookstore afternoons, we took a walk through Pike Place Market as the sun set over Puget Sound. The air was cool, filled with the scent of flowers and roasted coffee, and street musicians played soft tunes that carried into the night. Evelyn paused by the waterfront and looked out at the ferries crossing the bay. She said softly, "James, I never thought I would meet someone who would make me feel this alive again." I didn't know what came over me, but I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she held mine tightly, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. From then on, our bond deepened. We explored Seattle together, visiting the Chihuly Garden of Glass, strolling under cherry blossoms at the University of Washington campus, and taking quiet ferry rides to Bainbridge Island. Every day with her reminded me that love is not bound by age or timing. It simply arrives when it is meant to. When I introduced Evelyn to my children, I was nervous. But they saw the happiness in my eyes, and they welcomed her with open arms. My daughter said, "Dad, it's good to see you smile like this again." And for the first time in years, I felt like my life wasn't winding down. It was beginning again. Months passed, and our story became richer. We read books side by side in silence, we laughed over clumsy cooking attempts in my kitchen, and we sat under Seattle's cloudy skies with no need for words, just comfort and presence. The turning point came during one of those ferry rides across the Sound. The water sparkled, and Mount Rainier stood tall in the distance. Evelyn leaned against me and whispered, "I never thought it would happen again, but you stole my heart, James." In that moment, everything changed. The man who believed love was behind him discovered that life had given him another chance. I realized that happiness isn't something you schedule or predict. It comes when you open your heart, even after years of believing it's closed. Now, every day I wake up with gratitude. I never thought it would happen. I never thought love would return. But it did, and Evelyn stole my heart in the most unexpected, beautiful way. At 55, I thought my best days were behind me. Instead, they were just beginning.